instinctively, I just ran towards 3 Boston police officers that were running towards a runner that had fallen on the ground. And as I was running, the second bomb went off about 2 blocks in the distance. And I don't remember actually hearing or seeing that second bomb, but I just started shooting with my wide-angle lens of the 3 police officers and the runner, who was Bill Ifrig, who collapsed on the sidewalk.
I thought that was a brilliant picture. That's a picture that will stay in my personal memory bank forever.
He did what all photographers should do. An event happens, everybody's running away, he ran in.
The day of the Boston Marathon in 2013, I was in my usual position at the finish line on the street of, Boylston Street, and I believe it was my 5th year in a row covering that same spot. And it's a tight pool position, and by pool position I mean it's the Boston Herald, the Boston Globe, Associated Press, Reuters, Getty. We're only 5 photographers allowed in that position, so it's not very crowded, but it's a key position because you photograph every elite runner that's crossing the finish line. So you basically want to get the winner of every event that happens. And I got to my location 2 hours before the start of the marathon. I have my laptop computer, which I stick underneath the bridge, the overhead bridge, because I have to transmit from that location. So after every winner crosses the finish line in the category, like the winner of the women's marathon and the men's marathon, I would go back to my computer and send that photo. So it was a beautiful day. It was like just perfect weather, sunny, and photographed the marathon finishes. And then I remember from years past that some of the best photos are made, several hours after the elite runners cross the finish line. People collapse in front of you, they crawl to the finish line. A lot of the runners have brought their family members, along Boylston Street to run the last several hundred yards. So some of the best photos that you can make at the marathon are usually not the actual winners winning, but people struggling to finish, whether they're raising money for a charity or for hospitals or any cause you can think of. So I was standing on the finish line with probably 2 or 3 other photographers, and we were just kind of like looking around, waiting for something to happen, waiting for other runners. And the first bomb went off to my right, about 35 feet away. And it was so loud, I could feel the force of it, push me back a little bit. And my first thought was maybe it was a manhole cover exploded. We weren't sure, in my head, and I think also the police officers who I spoke to after that, none of us were sure what actually happened because there was so much smoke on the sidewalk you couldn't see. And then after I photographed the police officers, I walked over to the barricades, and there you could see the carnage. Just pools of blood and bodies on the sidewalk.
I thought it was a terrific piece of visual journalism, and it also enabled you to tell the story really dramatically and avoid a lot of the things we've just been talking about in terms of not just death, but dismemberment, horrible injuries. This was in terms of those issues, this was a clean image, but it was also tremendously dramatic.
We are first responders to the event. He jumped in and he started shooting.
What makes that photograph maybe usable for such a horrific event was there wasn't any body parts, there wasn't any blood, but it was the moment the bomb went off, and you know, a police officer has their gun out, the runner's on the ground, and there's haze and there's smoke, and you can see the flags. And I think that image kind of, in one image, kind of summed up what happened that day. There's a fine line between what's expected as privacy and what you can do. And you know, I think the best advice I can give to anybody is to read the MPPA guidelines, to read other cases that may be in the news about ethics in photojournalism, and never be afraid to stand up for your rights as a photographer, as a free press.
Continuing about the NPPA, I've been a member for a long time, since the, I guess, late 1970s, and I believe very firmly in their mission to keep the idea of good photojournalism, good accurate visual reporting and video reporting and multimedia reporting in not only the public eye, but the professional world's eye, so that you have people who don't think necessarily about how important those things are. And the NPPA is very good at reminding you that this is very important stuff. If we can't see what's going on in the world in an accurate, fair manner, then we're in big trouble. We're in even bigger trouble in our democracy than I like to think we are. So anyway, the ethics committee has always been a three-person committee headed by John Long, who founded it. And anytime something comes up in the world of photojournalism, an email or a blog post or something will go out, and it will definitely reach the three of us who are on this committee. And we've actually met very rarely, but we do emailing quite a bit. Anytime there's something that's happened that, where someone has crossed the line, or maybe they crossed the line, and there's a lot of discussion and a lot of disagreement about what this might mean, then we tend to weigh in on that. And I think it's a valuable function, not just because of us, but because it involves so many other people. You get people commenting, you start to be able to put your finger on the pulse of what people who are in this work now, much younger than I, doing this professional work, what they're thinking and what the pressures are on them.
It was a brand new world, this electronic world, but it was also fraught with potential. It was a Pandora's box. There was potential for all kinds of abuse. So I started thinking about it and started dealing with it right from the very first. After I got out of being president, I started dealing with the ethics issues, and for the next 25 years, I was either unofficially or then officially the ethics chair for the organization for 25 years until I retired from it all about 7-8 years ago, somewhere in there. It was at that point that 4 years ago they created the John Long Ethics Award. So now I was very honored by that, and we hand that out at the convention every year now for somebody who's done something for the ethics in the business, and it's still huge. It started as something that was strictly with the digital, and it was strictly with digital manipulation was the big issue, but then it branched out into all aspects of human relations and how to treat people, how to treat your subjects, how to treat your fellow workers, all these issues that came up. And so all these issues became part and parcel of what I was dealing with at that point.
In terms of a code of ethics that I applied to myself, there's so many that I have to listen to in my head that are either from the Globe Legal Department or from the MPPA Code of Ethics, or even the Boston Press photographers or the Boston Police Department. I mean, you basically have to understand your rights as a photographer on the street. You know, you have a right to be on a public street, you have a right to photograph people in public, but you also have to respect privacy, you have to show sensitivity in difficult situations. And I think a lot of ethics that I have and my fellow Glow photographers are just common sense. And you know when you're going to cross the line of being a person who is a human being with a camera and then just being a ignorant person. And I don't want to be part of that group. I don't want to be the person who everybody's going to write about or point to me and say, can you believe he took that photo?
You're there as a fellow human being. You need to take your human values into the situation with you. You don't exploit. You explain, you take accurate images so that everybody else can understand what is going on. That is good journalism.
And I remember photographing this young girl, a teenager who was Sydney Corcoran, and she was being tended to by two runners, and then a firefighter came over and a police officer, and she had a deep leg wound. I photographed her, and her mother actually landed about 20 feet away from her. Her mother, Celeste, and Celeste lost both her legs. So while I'm shooting this, I'm looking in front of me, and there was several other women who were on the ground, and one of them ended up being Crystal Campbell, who died. And I just remember seeing her, and it was just a horrific sight. And I kept shooting, but I never, you know, when I look back at those photographs, she was still alive, and she was hugging her best friend. So I think, you know, total time that I was there, maybe 12 minutes. I ended up walking through a lot of blood. I remember a police officer telling me, you know, please use some sensitivity while you're shooting these pictures, but nobody really threw me out of there. But then I realized as I was shooting the pictures that I was the only photographer there. Everybody else either ran back or nobody was there. I didn't see any TV crews, so in my head I'm thinking, this is important, I have to be here, I have to shoot this. So I stayed as long as I could, and then it became a crime scene and they threw up yellow tape. And by that point, I would say within 15 minutes every survivor was off the sidewalks and into ambulances. It was amazing the work that the EMTs and paramedics and first responders did. So yeah, I mean, I walked out of that area to a staging area near the medical tent, and I just remember looking down at my shoes and they were just covered with blood. And I think I looked at one picture in the back of my camera just to make sure I had any images, and I remember I called up my wife and I said, I'm okay, and she said, what are you talking about? And then she, as I was talking to her, she was listening to her car radio, and WBZ was broadcasting live about the bombings, and she said, oh my God, be careful. And I called my office, and first thing they said, are you all right? And I told them, and I left the area about 5 minutes after that, and had to literally walk about a half a mile to my car through throngs of people who said, what happened? What do you know? Did anybody die? You know, and I just couldn't talk. I just had to get back to my car. I knew this was a major news event and drove back to the Globe.
The thoughts about images of death, especially on the front page of a newspaper, of course that's an outmoded phrase right there. On the front of your website, whatever, your news product. Most good organizations with which I was familiar, I can talk most specifically obviously about the Boston Globe. I was there for 10 years, I was helping to make those decisions. Every place that I know of that's really worthy of respect has a policy of some kind. However, it almost always is not in writing for a very specific reason, that if you have something in writing and then you violate that, you can get sued over that, and your opponents can use it in court. So this is sort of like verbal history. It's passed down. You know what the process is at the Globe, you know what the policy is. For instance, at the Globe, the rule was, there was no rule against showing death on the front page. It was a firm rule that if we were considering doing that, that decision had to rest with the top editor of the paper who was there at the time, whether it was the executive editor or the managing editor or whatever, whoever was at that page one desk, the buck stopped there as to whether or not we were going to do something that might offend a number of readers and might cause people to cancel their subscriptions, which is a consideration. So I know what it was at the Globe. Anytime we had something like that, I knew there would be an active discussion about, are we going to use this picture? The very first question I was always asked when I would bring pictures like that to the page one desk was, well, what else do you have? In other words, what are my options here? It's very rare that it's like, this is one picture. So you have to look at what you have and what the risks are in terms of offending people. And I don't mean offending people politically, I mean offending them, and they write in and say, how dare you put that, that's so insensitive. So there was no rule, there was definitely no rule against showing death. I'm talking specifically about the front page now. The inside pages, obviously this is very different now in the internet world, there was less consideration given to it because those pictures were almost always in black and white and they were much smaller. The conversations were about, what are we going to hit people with above the fold on page one, potentially 4 or more columns wide. On the internet now, you have some variables, you have some options available to you that were not available in the print product. In the print product, you make the decision and that's it. It's going to press, this is what people are going to see. On the internet, you could have a big collection of pictures, which they do all the time, and a number of them may come up with sort of a what used to be a brown paper wrapper over them. It says this photo contains content that may be upsetting or may be offensive to some people. Oh, if you want to see this, click here, and if you don't want to see this, then you move on. So there's a little bit of wiggle room, and also the internet is changeable. If you feel like you've made a mistake putting something up, you just take it down. I thought the coverage was really nothing short of heroic. And one of the things I admire about what the Globe has done is to follow people now for years afterwards, to keep telling their story, to keep bringing what they went through into the public eye. Because it's something that deserves to be not just remembered, but it deserves to have people be aware of it, that these are issues that go on for the rest of your life. This is not, oh, that's too bad that person got hurt. No, this is really compelling human drama. So it's not just because I worked at the Globe, but I'm a huge fan of what they did.
The Corcoran's, Celeste got prosthetics and she ran across the finish line in 2014. So from April, when the marathon was in 2013, April 15th, to December, to Christmas of 2013, I followed the Corcoran family for a whole year and documented their recovery. But it just was such a long ordeal for her and her family, and just spending days and days and days with her, and doing a video and doing stills, and watching, her daughter progress, going to the prom. Celeste actually asked me to watch over her at the prom, because she couldn't make it there to help her. And yeah, it's just pretty amazing back then to look at all these photos. Seems like it just happened.
I think he did the right thing. And I think coming back to do those other stories was therapeutic for him and was good for the public, because it was good journalism. What was the outcome? What was the result? What was the consequence of this event? And that is journalism, and it's on a human level. And I think that is what set his agenda, and I think that was really good, really good.
As a photojournalist, you live with all your images in your head for as long as you live. Basically, they are stored there in a library, and you never forget some of the more important things you photographed in your career. And we take the hit. We go and see the terrible things that happen in life, and we're there right away and we shoot it. And it all adds up at some point. I like to describe it as a huge bucket of water, and you're at the point where the water is just at the top. So I think what happened to me at the marathon afterwards was I was just overcome with all these emotions, and I couldn't sleep. I had those images, especially of Crystal Campbell dying in front of me, and how can I get rid of that? And I didn't know, nobody really talked about PTSD in our career. It was always about, soldiers and first responders, but what about journalists? And it wasn't until then, afterwards, that we talked about it, and people say, you need time off, are you okay? And I think one of the best healing things I ever did was do a story on the Corcoran family, and how they got their life back together, and how they how Sydney and Celeste, rehabilitated and learned, how Celeste learned to walk again with her prosthetics. And, Kevin, who I consider my hero, who saved Celeste by taking his belt off and using it as a tourniquet, he always said to me, "Are you all right?" And I says, "Yeah, are you all right?" And, we hugged and talked about it. And I think just by talking about what happened and bonding with one of the families was the best thing I ever did. Picture of Kevin Corcoran putting his belt on Celeste's leg. That was used on the front of the New York Daily News, and they doctored up the photo so you couldn't see the blood and the gore.
They said that's more than our audience can handle. To me, that's unethical. If you don't feel like your audience can handle that, and that's your decision, then use a different picture. There were lots of them. And another publication, it may have been one of those two papers again, took a similar kind of image, and they photoshopped the wound so that it didn't look as bad as it was. And that to me is just, if you're not going to do it, use something else.
Integrity of the image is important. No matter, you don't add, you don't take away. You present the information as honestly as you can and as accurately as you can, and as without bias as much as you can.
It still matters that you have the sensibility, you have the sense of a story, you know what it is you're looking for to get at what my friend Teddy Gartland says is the heart of the matter. Get the heart of the matter. Most people are not doing that. They're just going like this or like this. So yes, it's changed, and obviously the industry has changed, and it's in a dangerous place, as so many things are right now. But I have to have faith, and I do, that the need and the desire for good visual journalism will survive.
The concept of due diligence and due observation and due discussion don't come into the modern age, and because everything has to be up online right now. And that is not good for journalism, not just photojournalism, but journalism.
I think one of the difficult things we have in photojournalism is being judges of our own work. And we have awards. We congratulate each other for photographs that we take. And we have, the National Press Photography Association awards, Best Pictures, and POI and Boston Press. And sometimes you wonder whether a photograph should be awarded because it's pretty horrific. And that happened to me from my photographs of the Boston Marathon bombing. And I really struggle with the fact that why am I getting these awards, National Press Photographer of the Year for these pictures? And you struggle with that, and you have to justify in your head that there will always be this type of awards going on because we always judge people and we judge photographers, and I think you just have to deal with it. And somebody recently asked me, well, your picture was your photograph of the 3 police officers is one of the most historic photos ever taken. What do you consider your favorite historic photo? And I can't really, I think it's a moment in time, in that time period. Like the flag raising of Iwo Jima was, the 1940s, and life was different, and that showed what was happening, or the Napalm Girl, the Vietnam War. And I bet you there's so many people right now that don't even know that happened. Kent State, and you look at that photograph and how horrific it was, but that was that period of time, and you wonder, do photographs make as much of an impact as they did back then? Because everybody has cell phones, everybody's taking their own photos. So I think in the future we have to weigh the balance of, fake news and photojournalism and what we do and the public's reaction to what we do. There's a lot going on in your head when it's not just taking a picture anymore. There's so much that you have to think about.
I saw a photograph, a tear came to my eye. All the pain and hurt, turn the page to pass it by. Moments in time, etched in our minds, framed so we'll see our new reality. I saw a photograph, a window into the world. I didn't like what I saw, I can't take it anymore. Moments in time, etched in our minds, framed so we'll see our new reality. Stopped me in my tracks, changed how I viewed the world. I don't know if there's going back.